Further tales of the Abbey Forest, which I've been sharing probably now for about 4 or 5 years on this long-term aspiration to restore the Abbey Forest to somewhat pre-Smokey the Bear conditions, which was a very, very different forest than what we have now. So, and I'm not to say that Smokey the Bear wasn't a bad idea, because it really helped people to become aware of being careless and reckless in the forest. But when Smokey the Bear was created, it started the beginnings of one of the greatest fire suppressions in our American forest that has ever been known. And because we put out every little tinder, whether Mother Nature made or human made, we now have got basically infernos waiting to happen across this country, particularly in the West here. So one of the things that we're trying to do, long-term forest stewardship here at the Abbey, is to try to get some of that fuel, some of that fire suppression, which a fire can't do around here because it would just totally torch the entire Northwest, is that we're trying to mimic that fire by taking down, doing selective thinning of certain trees, and trying to open things up, get the vegetation out, get some water, get some space, get the disease out. So it's a real learning process, and we've been doing this since 2008. And one of the things that we get to enjoy is that through our relationship with the Department of Natural Resources, there is a plethora of people who have expertise, they have knowledge, they have firsthand experience on how to do this because they've been doing it in their own forests. I think it's 80% of the land in the state of Washington is privately owned, which means it's owned by logging companies, and it's owned by people like the Abbey and our guests today, Bob and Jane Takai. The other is owned by the federal government and the state, but a lot of it belongs to us folks. And so what our responsibility is for this fuel-laden forest that we have is that we've got to find a way to take care of it. So the Department of Natural Resources and the National Fire Plan gives some money to people and communities like us to help get this fire danger under control. So we've done quite a bit of work, about 35 acres now that we've thinned in the past 8 years, with some help from a wonderful crew, Timber Ventures. Al has done quite a bit of that. The community's done it, our volunteers have done it, our guests have done it. And so we're looking at some really nice improvement in some of our forest stands. So along the lines with this wonderful sort of lineage transmission of who's doing this and who's going to pass on the information, is that through a chance meeting with Bob and Jane Takai 8 years ago by Venerable John Pell and I at a forest workshop, we met them, enjoyed them, knew we were connected on some level. They disappeared out of our life. Al comes into our life to work on our land, and we find out that he's good friends with Bob and Jane, who remember the monk and the nun that they talked to at the forest workshop 8 years ago. So Bob and Jane just, hey, okay, we remember you. So Al got us together. So Al just finished a 10-acre site, and we specifically asked him to deal with some big brush areas because we want to replant and do an experiment on bringing back into our forests some of the original forest kind of species, which was white pine and larch. So Bob and Jane have been doing this for 35 years. They've planted probably how many thousands of trees? 40,000 trees. So we figured that they would be good people to bring on board for our little half-an-acre plot we're going to experiment with. So out of the kindness of their hearts, they came today and we took a walk looking through Al's job, and we went up to that little open meadow that they've given us some recommendations on how to deal with it. We're only going to plant 200 trees, folks, but it's a start on how to do it to improve our ratio of success on how to take care of them so the deer don't eat them and the elk don't and the moose don't and they don't die from lack of water and things like that. So, but what I'm thinking about is, what it brings up for me is this, I mean, in Buddhism we have oral transmission. We have from teacher to student, and that the purity of the Buddhist teachings comes from this transmission, this lineage line, that the teachers through practicing gain these profound realizations of the Dharma in their minds, and out of great compassion and love, they teach who's ever in front of them the Buddhist teachings. And those students, hopefully, over a course of maybe one life, many lives, they gain the realizations and they become teachers themselves. So for 2,600 years, this transmission has gone unbroken in many of the Buddhist traditions till this present day. Well, in forestry, we kind of have the same thing, is that since forestry started, we've gotten the old loggers, we've gotten the old pioneers, people who lived on the land, and the Native Americans, huge elders of great knowledge. So what we were talking about today is that because of the economy of things and the industrialization of forestry, the lineage of father to children passing, or parents to children, of the forestry tradition on how to log, how to work the land, how to create the health of the forest is getting lost. Because it's no longer economical. We're selling it to everybody in the world for really, really cheap. The logging corporations are consolidating into bigger conglomerates, making a lot of money, but the logger and the forester on the back end is hardly being able to pay the bills. So what's happening is the responsibility is falling more and more on us, the extended forestry family that isn't related to the logging family, that are trying to pick up this piecemeal wisdom that the logging and the Native Americans and the foresters have been trying to so wholeheartedly pass on to the people like the Abbey and people like Jane and Bob and Al and his crew, so we can hold this transmission on how we can keep these forests, first of all, get the fuel load down, get the fire danger down, get the disease down, how to promote and bring these forests back to the way they used to be, which were a lot less disease prone, they were a lot more fire resistant, they were drought tolerant, they were just very, very different. They were kind of living on the land the way that they should. But since that has no longer happening, we've got trees that are very disease prone, they're not very fire resistant, they're not very drought tolerant. So we've got a whole big mess in the forest. So today I just wanted to rejoice at Bob and Jane's kindness. They have passed on some of the oral transmission that I have on this little MP3 recorder that I will gladly type out so we can have some of their wisdom, so that we can hold that. So when we do our little 1 acre next spring, I'll be able to bring on some of their wisdom onto that process. So anyways, for the dependent arising of things, for the interdependence, for the preciousness of transmitting the wisdom of generations and of what we know, whether it's forestry, whether it's stuccoing, whether it's website creation, there's something about passing on what we know to the next generation, because that's the way that the wisdom of the world grows, and that we can really maintain a sustainability, because there's going to be enough people to carry on the wisdom from generation to generation. So anyway, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jane. And it's been just a lot of fun today.